everything. I wish I did know what they say.
Yes, there's our
Everything about
producer.
it will allow everything. Everything
Which I did know what
everything about it is
Yes,
amazing.
there's our
Everything
producer.
it will allow. I can't
everything.
think of the word. Everything something will allow.
Everything.
Everything the lawyers will allow.
Yeah, yeah. And who are the lawyers?
We are the lawyers.
Bialy and Bagel Stock. No, Bagel and Bialy is Bialy.
Yeah, Bialy Stock and Bloom.
Yeah, Bialy Stock and Bloom. Thank you. I knew there was a bagel in there somewhere.
Max always has a bagel on the way to work.
Right. How are you, Michael?
Well, I'm better than you. You want to run around the block?
No, I couldn't. Right now, I couldn't run around the bed if Gina Lollobrigida was chasing me.
Now think about that before you make that absolutely true, because I believe you could probably take a few. Your first step is the quick one.
Right. I would be slow after that, but it would certainly not be running away. I would be running toward.
Well, you remember Gina? She was lots of fun.
She was a good woman, lots of fun. Her and Sophie Lauren, kept things moving.
Well, let's talk about your condition, because you were among the headlines that we had to have. It just dropped in to see you dropped in, and that changed your condition. See what condition you're in.
Yeah, it did. I mean, it's funny. I posted that. I guess maybe it sounds a lot worse than it is, or maybe it's. I'm not trying to admit that it's as bad as it is, but I fell last week, as many of us know, because I talked about it, and I've fallen before, and I've had things like this happen before, but never. My body is never really. I mean, I've been in a motorcycle accident that I broke everything that sticks out. And it didn't feel as bad as this.
You broke your attitude that day.
I broke a lot that day. And I wound up in the emergency room twice this weekend. I wound up not being able to sleep for 3 days. That's probably when I wrote that message. And I'm still in just an incredible amount of pain. As a matter of fact, one of the reasons I'm doing the show today is because I'm hoping that it will keep my mind off of the pain. And, that's the physical part of it. And then the mental part of it, of course, is, we lost our good friend John Clayton last week.
Yeah, it was a very weird day.
Yeah. And, those of you who know Mikey and me for a long time know that Mikey and I worked with John for years. And
he always had a phone. He always had a phone in his ear. And I mean, always.
He was surgically attached to that phone. I'll be surprised if they don't bury him with it. And but not only, let's take our friendship of him out of it for a second and just talk about his proficiency. He was on the phone with people in the days where you had to go from phone booth to phone booth to be on the phone with people. I mean, I traveled with John. John would get out of an airplane in an airport and run to a phone booth to talk to people.
Because he had to make calls. There were, in fact, general managers all over the league were expecting to hear from him.
Yeah, if you didn't hear from John, you either weren't as important as you used to be, or you had, there was other things going on. But you talk about a guy who knew the dirty secrets of the league inside and out.
He knew the salary cap of every league, and he had it in his mind. He could just spout it to you.
You could almost, he didn't know just the salary cap, Michael. He knew how and why everybody got to the salary cap. He knew how and why. He knew the numbers, but he also knew the personalities that made up the numbers.
He knew every restructured deal in the league.
Right. And people would say things to him and talk to him about things that were phenomenal, were off the board, that they wouldn't tell anybody else. But he had this great Western Pennsylvania kind of unassuming way about him. He really looked like the professor.
Yeah.
A guy that you would expect to be teaching a course on sports economics in high school or college. But yet, he probably in his heyday held as much power as most anybody in the league, certainly on the media side. And I know that there was a lot of jealousy around that from people he even worked with.
Well, sure, because he wasn't on this big Seattle paper. He was on a Tacoma paper
Right.
when he first made his bones, when he came out from Pittsburgh. And there was a lot of guys with bigger names and bigger columns and bigger deals than John, who didn't know anything about what was really going on with the Seahawks, and John knew it all. And also what everybody else was doing in the division that would affect the Seahawks. He could see those stories coming and going.
He sold more Tacoma News Tribunes than the Paperboy.
Yep.
I mean, he really did. I mean, people bought that paper to read John Clayton and to read Don Borst and to read, other writers that were down there. Larry LaRue, who was their fine baseball writer that passed away a number of years ago. And John McGrath is another person that comes to mind. That these guys' columns were every bit as good as anybody's column in the Seattle Times or any other, pick a newspaper from anywhere. And their columns or their news reporting was as good, if not better, than what you got out of the PI or the Seattle Times.
Well, he had a way of finding the inside story. The numbers that a lot of other guys thought were boring or inconsequential became the future of many teams because of their limitations or their abilities under the salary cap, and also their deal-making abilities. Who was in, who was out, who was hurt, who was sick, who was in rehab. He knew all the stuff.
And you know what, Mikey had a good bull radar. He could tell a guy who was bull crapping you from 1,000 miles away. He had a great ability for that.
And in fact, he had that opinion of your old partner in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. He was John was a guy who and as far and he was this bulldog newspaper reporter on one side, but yet I don't want to call him, I don't want to disrespect him, but there was also this like really kind of goofy, nerdy side to John that you would look at yourself or you would talk to somebody and say, how does he know that? How does he get that information? Where does it come from? And it was the old adage of hard work.
Yeah, I called him. You didn't.
It wasn't that he was slick. It wasn't that he tricked people. He didn't go hanging out in the discos at night. If you saw John in a disco at night or in a club or something like that, which we did on occasion, it was funny.
He was out of place.
To see him dressed up, or I mean, we've been to a couple of Super Bowl balls with him, and he looked so out of place, but yet he was the main guy in the,
and that was before he became the professor. That was before he became the professor a la ESPN, before they started using his remarkable abilities on the network.
Well, you knew once. I mean, you probably don't remember this, maybe you do, but I remember this Friday I came up here for my audition. I came up, we did our audition, we went back to the station, we cut a promo, and then that next Saturday morning we did another 3-hour show with John Clayton. And it was, I didn't know John all that well. I knew of him, and I knew he was the guy up here for football because I was doing some work with the 49er broadcasts, and we would have him on. And he was like my kind of, my guy to get set up for the show.
Secret weapon.
Well, no, because we had him already. People knew about him, but he was like I was in charge of him. make sure that he's on or on the field at boom, you know. And it was interesting to finally work with him and meet him and just to gain the depth of knowledge. But yet, with all the knowledge he had, everything, there was still this general likability about him, this goofiness, this kind of I don't know. He was like a nerdy neighbor next door that was always down in the basement with the computers.
Do you remember his commercial, his promo for ESPN, where he takes off his fake John Clayton hair? He's got long locks. He looks like he's been playing with the kids on the block. Hops in bed to play video games and says, "Mom, I'm off. Bring me my sandwich."
And I'm thinking of his wife, Pat, who went everywhere with him. She would come in and be by his side when he was doing the shows. And, you know, we always saw at the Super Bowl, it had maybe the greatest Christmas letter that they would send out each year. You got 2 letters a year from the Claytons. You got the Christmas card with a long letter about how they were doing and family and this and that. And then a week or 2 after Super Bowl, you got another letter from the Claytons, and that was Pat. And she would write about their Super Bowl experience. They met at the, I believe they met at the TNT, if I'm not mistaken. And so she was a writer as well. And she just wrote these beautiful dispatches of, you know, their year in football. And I always look forward to seeing those and kind of just understand it, because they were just these 2 really nice people.
And we didn't expect, a lot of people at a certain age get sick and everyone knows about it and they know there's something seriously wrong, but that was not the case with John. We don't even know what his cause of death was, to my knowledge.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything, but I haven't been reading a lot the last couple of days.
This seems to have surprised a lot of people.
Yeah. And you know, I think that, you know, I'll always remember a bunch of things about John. We did the first half hour of the show on Saturday, even though it's drive time. We talked about John, and there was 3 things I remembered about John upon hearing of his passing. 3 out of a million memories. How do you get it down to 3? But there certainly was the night we were at the Wolfie's at 3:00 in the morning.
Wolfie's 23, please.
Wolfie's 23 down on Miami Beach, 3:00 in the morning. We had gone to the to the Super Bowl party, I think it was. Yeah,
the one
Anthony and the Imperials were singing there,
and so was Richie Havens.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we I forget if we all went together or we went separate cars or something and wound up together. But I remember sitting in Wolfie's at, whatever it was, 3:00 in the morning. Wolfie's a 24-hour Jewish diner, Jewish deli in Miami. And was the place to go, is the place to be seen among probably our age. I don't know if the kids were probably hanging out with, I think Deion Sanders was throwing a big bash that night. And if I'm no Clayton, he probably was at the bash already, but
sure.
But anyway, we wound up sitting all together in Wolfie's, at Wolfie's. And it was like you were sitting with royalty. You couldn't talk to him because so many people were coming up to the table.
Everybody in Miami Beach knew him.
Yeah, it was like sitting with Don Corleone.
Yeah.
It really was. It was like sitting with the Godfather. And he had it all, people would come up and the only thing they didn't do was kiss his ring. And I just remember sitting there that night, Michael, and looking and saying, my God, we're like, I bet you that the commissioner doesn't get this many people that come up to them on on a night of an event like this, and cross the line and come over and say hello and sit and talk for a few minutes. But John welcomed that. Matter of fact, he made his business out of it. But what I also noticed about John is that he was genuine when he talked to people. He didn't just pump you for information. Some of the guys that you talk to and you would watch, and I'll name names. If you talk to Chris Mortensen, maybe nice guy, maybe not. You didn't know Chris Mortensen. When you talk to John Clayton, after you talked to him for a few minutes, you knew who John Clayton was. And you knew, you had more of an idea of who you were talking to. And I think that's what he used to get people, to tell him things that they wouldn't tell anybody else.
And although he was a great writer and began as a writer and did his research and calls and his work as a writer, he loved radio. He loved being on the radio. He loved sports radio.
Yeah, he really did. He always credited Susie Colbert with his success. Not Susie Colbert. Oh man, I made a bad mistake there. Now she was a woman that was on ESPN in the early in the early 90s.
Angela.
No, very petite, very smart,
blonde,
very able to stick it out with the guys. Woman. Oh man, I can't remember. It'll come to me. But he always credited her with his success on TV. She actually took him and she gave classes at ESPN.
How to do it.
For radio guys, or radio people, not just guys, who wanted to be on television. Because as we both know, there's a certain technique to doing television that whether you're, you could have 50 years experience in radio, but if you stay in some of your radio habits, it's not going to look good.
You look like a fish out of water.
On air if you're on TV. And she taught John a lot. And
is it Angela Kramer?
Andrea Kramer. Yes, Andrea Kramer. Andrea Kramer. He always credited her, told me about that. She taught him so much about being on TV and where to look and where to, how to look at your audience and talk to them. And he succeeded in that. She might have been his best student.
Well, she took him to the top.
He might have been her best student.
She did a good job. Thank you, Andrea.
Yeah, she really did. The other memory I have of John that I really love, it was the craziest, up until that time, maybe one of the craziest things. I think I told you about it the day after it happened, is the Raiders were here. And
it hurts when you laugh, doesn't it?
It does. The Raiders were here, and Al Davis was, as he was wont to do, sat in the press box next to his traveling secretary. And so I'm talking, John is sitting next to Al Davis. And I walked over to John to say something, and John introduces me to Al Davis. So, hi, Mr. Davis, how are you? From, KJR, yada, yada. And so everything goes silent. They're going to do the national anthem. So in the press box and everybody's there. I think Gary Wright was like right in front of us, the great PR guy from the Seahawks. And Davis stands up. I think he had yellow pants on that day, if I remember right.
What? Not black, gray, and silver?
Yeah, no, maybe he did. Maybe something I had in my mind's eye. But he says, sing the song. And Clayton and I are looking at each other. He says, no, sing the song. And when Al Davis tells you to sing the national anthem, you sing the national anthem, right?
Sing along here.
Sing along. So there's me, Clayton, and Davis standing in the press box at the Kingdom on a Sunday afternoon at, 1:45 or whatever it is. And we're singing the Star Spangled Banner.
Oh, say, can you see these three guys?
And I just always thought it showed me a couple of things. Number one, Clayton couldn't sing. Number two, all his love of music, he couldn't sing. Number two is that when Al Davis says something, you better do it. You do it, or you do it.
Those are your choices. It's simple.
Yeah. Number three, that Al Davis doesn't care what the rules are. Al Davis will do what he wants, what he feels needs to be done for him. And he didn't want to be singing alone, so he enlisted us to sing with him. We were, for that day, the Al Davis Choir.
The trio, the Davis Trio.
Yes, comparable with Mitch Miller, comparable with Hines and Dad, although I don't think we danced as good as them.
The three freshmen.
Now go run to your Googles, kids, and look up Hines and Dad.
If you insist, yeah. They had the moves.
And it was just a fascinating experience to have an owner of an NFL team, especially one as powerful and controversial as Al Davis, stand up and tell you to sing. He sang. And Clayton was, and he belted it out, or as good as he could.
I have a story about Clayton. There was a weekend of a quarterbacks golf tournament in Coeur d'Alene, whatever that golf course is that has the floating green.
Oh yeah. Lake Coeur d'Alene Resort, right?
Probably. It was a big deal. And Drew Bledsoe had just been drafted, and he was on his way to start his career in the NFL. And I remember that day we saw him warming up, but he had the 1,000-yard stare. He was playing golf, but he was already in the huddle, looking at his future in the NFL from a rookie's point of view. But to get to Coeur d'Alene, we had one of those cars that you still drive. We used to both drive them in those days, and it didn't have a back seat. It was like a 240Z. I don't remember what kind of car it was. We had to decide who was going to sit in the back. So it was, I drove. John Hunter was in the shotgun seat, and Clayton was in the back, stretched out on the luggage because there really wasn't a seat. He didn't complain once. Never complained that he didn't really have a place to sit all the way to Coeur d'Alene. And the good thing was I brought a bunch of CDs and I brought a bunch of Jimi Hendrix, and that made his day.
Yeah.
Made his day. There was a long solo of Machine Gun recorded live, and I said, "You want to hear the end of this?" He said, "Don't touch it. Let it go. Don't move that. Don't go to the next cut. I love it just like it is." We listened to Jimi Hendrix the whole way. When we got there, we were walking around, and everywhere you look, there's a quarterback. There are NFL quarterbacks all over the place, retired, playing, and just drafted. And John Elway is there. And I tried to get an interview with John Elway and introduce myself from KJR. And his wife says, "KJR? I grew up in Seattle listening to KJR." And as soon as she said that, I knew I had him. So Elway says, "We got to go." And he starts walking back to the hotel. And his wife goes with him, and I go with her. So the three of us are talking. She's in the middle. He's on the far side, trying to pretend that I'm really not there. And then me with Clayton and Hunter walking, trailing along, and I got the machine rolling, and I got the interview with him. He finally stopped and said, "All right, let's talk." We had a really good interview that we played twice, and it was all because of his wife growing up in Seattle. I wouldn't have had a chance. He would have frozen me right out.
Yeah.
And you have to respect that when somebody doesn't want to talk. Thank you, Mr. Elway. Thanks for the great football, blah, 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 let him go. But because I had that chance, we just followed him and followed him and followed him. And we walked all the way back. We walked 300 yards together, all the way back to the hotel. She's talking about her childhood in Seattle, and I'm just letting her go, go, go. And Elway's looking at me like, how did you do this? And we got the interview out of it. And I remember that. But the Elway story came to me later. Said, oh God, that's when I got the Elway interview. But what I really remember is John Clayton stretched out in the back of this 240Z or whatever it was, insisting that the Hendrix music go uninterrupted, because that's what he loved. It was a great drive with a lot of Jimi Hendrix getting to Coeur d'Alene.
Yeah, Clayton was a great character. I mean, he really was. If you really got the gist of Clayton when he was on the radio on a Saturday morning show. You really got
that was his thing.
Yeah. You really got what he was about. He loved doing that, like you said before. He loved radio. He loved talking to people. I think it gave him, he spent so much time talking to general managers and people of power and, commissioners and so on and so forth, that when probably the only chance he ever got to talk to like real people, like truck drivers and the guy that works at the hamburger stand and, the laundry people, stuff like that, was 2 times, when he talked to, some of the clubhouse people or the locker room people, or when he talked to people on his radio show. I didn't imagine John Clayton walked into the supermarket and just started talking to the clerk or to people. I think he was probably, because, he knew he had so much going on in his head that it was pretty amazing.
Well, you could ask him a simple question and it would take 15 minutes to answer, because he would take you all the way back to when the guy signed and what the clauses in his contract did and how it came to hurt his career, because it all came together in one year when he was injured. And so they traded him and they had a traded contract, and that screwed up the salary cap. And then they got released and then he got picked up. I mean, he knew the whole thing.
He put together one year. I never asked people to do this, but I thought it would be fun. One year I was single at the time, as I am now. And I put this, I was going out with this person and she was into playing fantasy football.
Oh dear.
So I said to John, I said, hey, you know what? Would you do me a favor? Would you give me a fantasy football team or a couple of options at each position, so when they do the draft, I'll give her this list and she could draft who's ever on the list. He gave me a list of obtrusive names that, a couple of ones that you obviously knew, but guys to pick that were going to be good.
Yeah.
Hadn't gotten good yet. And so he gave it to me, said, hey, I was glad to do it. I was up late, up late was 6 a.m. for John. And damn if the team didn't win the fantasy league.
Of course.
I mean, because he knew the guys that were going to get used that year. He knew the guys who were going to hit certain milestones. He knew who had it in their contract that they got. And I think that, if I'm not mistaken, he told me he hated the fantasy stuff. But, he did it because
he knew
friends. He also got us, I know you remember this, but John also, when we left KJR, you left before I did, but, and I remember that John, I don't know if he did this for you 100%. I'm not 100% sure. I think he did. But when I got fired from KJR and immediately, call ESPN, right? They must need people. And, you couldn't get any traction there until John called. I can't remember the program director's name now. That's how long ago it was. but I couldn't get traction until John called him up. The weekend after John called him up, I was back in Bristol. I think you were there 2 weeks before I was.
Remember, it took longer to get the drug test than it did actually to do the show or travel or set up or do anything for them. ABC owned them at the time, and they were very worried about someone smoking marijuana and then doing a show.
Yeah, and it's the craziest place you ever worked because it was so huge. Yeah. I mean, the personnel department was bigger than any radio station I ever worked in.
It was huge. And then what I liked best about that was the dinner beforehand.
Yep. One thing good about ESPN is 5 o'clock on Saturday night or whatever it was.
Everybody eats
together. They bring in dinner from the Italian place down the road. They bring in dinner. I'm sure that somebody's parents probably own that place.
I hope so.
Get it up in the kitchen and put it in tins.
I hope it's Andrea Kramer's parents.
And but everybody sat around and ate together and talked to people, and it turned out to be a very good time, not only for people to to eat, but to talk to each other a little bit. People that didn't talk to each other, the whole, people that were in the control room would come out.
No, I remember during that dinner, I talked to Chris Berman and Linda Cohn.
Yeah. I don't know. I was back there probably about 10 times total. And it was a trip. It was a trip to see how the mothership worked.
Yeah. I wonder if it's as much fun now as it was then. Probably in some ways more so.
You know what, Mikey? I don't think it wasn't fun. That's the one thing I always remembered about ESPN. It wasn't fun working there. It was
intense.
It was business.
Yeah.
You had to hit cues and you're on networks and you had 3 producers sitting in that room. I had no idea what they all were doing, but they were doing something. And it was really just, I don't know, it was a trip to me. I wouldn't have wanted to work there permanently. I liked it. I liked the station I was given there and was able to work there for a bunch of weeks. And, loved working with Bobby V. That's who I worked with, I think, the most. Although I did a solo show here out of Seattle for 5-6 times. And, the one thing that they did is they had it down. I mean, they had the sound. They had, days, now you just pull the sound off the internet. But back then, I'll never forget this. They had a room, you'll remember this, and we're talking about John Clayton, by the way, but we're sidetracked just for a second. They had a room where they had I don't know, a wall of recorders hooked up. And there was a guy that sat at every recorder. And his job was to listen to the game and to find the highlights.
And they had
no digital.
And of course, they had a stringer there too.
Plus you had a stringer. You set your game up. You were in charge of that game, so you had all the highlights. You had all of the stuff right away, and then you had to write the highlights for the person who was on the air, or the person who was on the air would look at them and say, "Okay, I'll write my own." But they did have it together. And I remember, I never forget that wall. I mean, now it could all be done on one desk, but in those days, that's how it worked. You had to listen for the highlights because the only ones that put highlights together was CNN. ESPN in those days. You could call them up and get a package of highlights from if you were an affiliate station, or CBS did it too. When I got to Cairo, I remember they did it at CBS for sports.
But certain games, they probably didn't do them all.
No, you know what? I think they did most games. I think they had a stringer at each game, and they sent you sent down a game wrap and 4 or 5 highlights from each game. So it was interesting. John, get back to John. John just taught. I remember when guys like there was certain guys that got to KJR. And they would goof on John. all the time. They didn't have a lot of respect for his station and where he had gotten to. And I was lucky enough, you and I came along in a time when we were still taught to respect people like that. People who had those kinds of connections, people who held that station in life that
Plus,
made them
he wasn't like anybody else in the business. He was
right.
different from everybody.
And you know what? He was one of the kindest people you'd ever meet in your life. Him his love for his wife Pat was something to see. It taught everybody a lesson in how to be in love. And I just always remember that, and he just had that I don't know, he loved her and took her with him on the road, took him with him. She went everywhere with him.
Was he still working at Cairo?
I think he was doing something one day a week. He was writing a weekly article for the Washington Post. He was also with Channel 5, King TV here, doing their wrap-up show. And I'm trying to think, there was a few other things he was doing with a couple of them. He was doing something on KDKA on their afternoon drive show.
I wonder what he would have told us about Mitch Trubisky being the quarterback. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
Didn't make sense in Chicago, and it doesn't make any sense in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. No, but he might have also taken the other side of that one and said that Trubisky might be just the guy they're looking for.
He was underutilized, and he's gonna be the Jim Plunkett of this year.
Right, and going
to come back and show you all.
Right, under my home, because the best thing is to have is a quarterback with ability that is underutilized and pissed off because he didn't get used right somewhere.
Right, that's right.
Those are the guys who generally put some numbers up on the board. Then those are the guys you want on your fantasy team because they're coming out loaded for bear.
Well, it would be on my fantasy team because of the following reason. He always got the story. He always managed to put together the right contact with the right rumor, with the right timing, and be able to say what it means down the road, 15 games into the season. What's this guy going to mean to this team? What is he? How does this signing? How does this cutting? How does this release impact the team? And what's it mean? And that's the kind of vision he had, and the kind of contacts that he maintained. And why some people tell guys in the business everything about their trades or their plans for a football team, I don't know. But they told John those things, and he made good use of it. He was the professor in so many ways.
Well, I think, to me, the secret of John was that you could tell him everything, and he'd know what to leave out.
Yeah.
He'd know what he could keep in to keep it entertaining, and he would ask you if he was in doubt as to something, but he wouldn't hang somebody out to dry. If he smelled a great story, but he couldn't use it for the A reason, B reason, or C reason, he'd figure out a way to get it out there. As many good reporters will be able to do, but John had a knack at being able to do it, and he was right.
I think he probably ended up calling all the other football teams in the league to find out what was really going on with everybody in the league, because he followed Seattle and he went through a lot of lean years where they didn't have a quarterback, they didn't have a chance, they didn't have a team, they hadn't put together a winning package. And if anybody knew it, he knew it better than anyone. By the way, that Trader Joe's lemonade is excellent.
Oh, you know what, actually, Michael? It is excellent, but I made my own little concoction this morning of honey ginger echinacea.
Hey, there you go. Take care of those ribs, baby.
And lime juice, water, and Splenda.
The
Because
man's
you
a
have to have
genius.
two things that say water and Splenda.
Well, hey, you did well with your ribs getting through the show today, Vin. Congratulations. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what a trooper does. A trooper is someone who goes to work just like everybody else, but they go to work when they don't want to go to work. And it's especially hard in show business because you don't just show up and sit at your desk, you got to do a show. So Vinny, you did a show today, you're a trooper.
Well, I wanted to make sure that we got our words in about John Clayton. I haven't heard anything about a service yet or anything like that. So if I hear something that's a public service, I will certainly convey that information on. I'll hopefully be back a little bit more on social media this week. You know what? I didn't have it in me. I couldn't look at the war. I couldn't look at the bad stuff.
There was plenty of it.
And there's plenty of it, man. I know that we'll have time to talk about it during the week. I just I see how bad things are getting over in Ukraine, and you get more worried every day.
It ain't going to be nice. It's not going to be pretty, and it could be, instead of one thing happening that would make it all go away or make it all more intense, it looks like it's just going to be a gradual grind.
Yeah, I think, Mikey, that we're up against something that we haven't seen in a long time, and most people have never seen anything like this. There aren't a lot of people left who remember what it was like on the ground for World War II.
No, and people cannot imagine what one evil man can accomplish when no one will stop him.
Right, and we may be at a point in our history where we're going to have to pay a dear price to protect freedom.
There's got to be a CIA plot somewhere to finish this off the right way. There's got to be a way.
Nobody's ever going to admit it, right? Even if there is.
No, I don't want an admission. I just want it to succeed.
Yeah, I mean, just like with it's funny. You go back and you think the biggest conspiracy theory of our time is Kennedy, and the bigger conspiracy than that, though, is did Kennedy go to have Castro killed, and Castro got him first? And nobody was ever able to prove that one way or the other.
No one ever proved it.
People still keep these things when they happen pretty damn locked down, pretty tight.
Well, let's hope they find a way in through the back door. Leave the back door open, by the way.
Yeah. Well, you're going to be able to kill people. I mean, it's just a fact. If you want to kill somebody bad enough, you'll kill them.
Put a rocket through the bathroom. Put a rocket through the bathroom window.
Yeah. What a horrible way to get it to, right? You're sitting there doing your business, then all of a sudden, bada boom.
It got very bright, then I don't remember much.
All I know is that 2-ply toilet paper was burning like a combustion engine.
It was burning. It does burn. It's a healthy flame.
Two-ply will get you, 2-ply will get you 20,
It'll get your attention, especially if you're using it at the time.
Oh my Lord. But hopefully they will get it resolved. I don't have any higher hopes than I did the last time I turned on the TV and saw, 5 people who I don't know talking about going after Putin or whoever they want to go after this week.
Vinny, I want you to take it easy today. Take your pain medicine and get some sleep if you can. Rest is the only thing that's going to make you feel better, and your ribs are going to thank you for it eventually.
Yeah, I'm going to go down to my local Les Schwab and see if I can get my buttocks rotated a little later.
And get that fire engine red paint job.
Yeah, way before the rush, because this weekend everybody will be down there, so I'll try to beat them so I don't have to.
And remember what Les Schwab says.
I will. I'll tell you. I'll let you know what Les says. Les was a Schwaber when he was young.
He always said, "Right."
Right. All right, Mikey. I will catch up with you on Wednesday morning if the Lord's willing, and the creek don't rise. You take care of yourself, pal.
You take care of yourself. Manischewitz is quite a wine.
What a wine. All right, man. Take care.
See you then.
Bye-bye.